Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and in today's video we are going to talk about panel making. What panels you can choose for oil paintings from a lot of panels which are available in the market today. This is going to be helpful for artists as well as collectors because I am going to give you a lot of mechanical as well as physical characteristics of the materials which will be helpful in selecting the substrates for painting. Let us now talk about the substrate. What is a substrate? Substrate is the surface that holds the painting, and this is the basic structural element of our entire project, and if the structural element fails, the painting obviously is not going to survive for long. So that is why it is very important to select a proper substrate while selecting the surfaces for painting. And in this video I am going to help you out with that. I am going to tell you certain characteristics of the woods which you have to look forward to in order to select your wood for paintings or oil paintings. Let us start with a brief history about it. First, the rigid supports were used. Rock was one of the examples of rigid support, and then comes the solid wood. The artists from Renaissance have made panel making a craft. If you haven't seen the video which I made on panel making techniques used by old masters, I would suggest you guys to go watch that video first because it will give you a lot of things to consider in order to make the panels for paintings. Sophisticated joinery, rigid structure, and the conservations by conservators have preserved the painting till date. But the panels made from solid wood possess a serious problem. Wood is a cellular structure and it is having cells that absorbs water. Once the wood is cut from the tree, the cells will lose water but are still capable of absorbing water in different humid conditions, and hence will show expansion and compression in different humidity atmospheres, and that is why seasoning is very important. The wood, when dried over longer periods of time, the cells in the woods will become more stable and hence will be resistant to expansion and compression. Well seasoned wood is very important. Nowadays kiln drying process is used, but the kiln drying process, which is an artificial seasoning of wood, is not able to produce properly seasoned wood. The hardwoods of mahogany and oak can be used for easel paintings. The wood is cut into two patterns. One is radial cut and one is tangential cutting. In a radial cut, the stresses due to expansion and compression will be divided equally, whereas in tangential cut, these stresses are unequally divided and hence will result in cupping, bending and twisting of the wood and ultimate failure also. Lumberyards nowadays will not be having tangential wood, but it is always good to check because in case of radial cuts, a lot of wood will be wasted, so most of the people will be keeping only tangentially cut wood. The semi-hardwoods and softwoods of poplar and pine should be avoided. While making the panels, take the thickness of 1 inch because that will give a good structural deformation response. In order to equally divide the stresses, the sizing and the gesso should be applied on all the faces along with the edges. So in order to further reduce the stresses, you can use the paint which you are going to paint your painting with and apply on all the faces as well as the edges. Since not large trees are harvested and hence the thickness of the panel will not be huge, and in order to make bigger panels you will have to join these wooden panels all together. Make sure that the gluing is done properly because when you are putting cradles at the back, that might result in cracking and splitting. Let us now talk about the laminated panels. Because of engineering in wood industry, there are a lot of other substrates which have removed the drawbacks of solid wood. Now the wood industry is also measuring the mechanical and physical properties of the wood, which will enable the users to select better wood for whatever project they need. In our case, we want to use the wood as a painting material for painting our paintings, right? So in order to do that, we have to look for dimensional stability and stiffness, that is doesn't changes with moisture, and also the sizing and the priming can be properly done on the wood or not. There are 4 characteristics which an artist needs to consider, so I will first explain the 4 characteristics and then I will talk about the woods, different types of woods which are available in market. So first one is density. Density is the measure of how dense the medium is. The less denser the wood substrate or the laminated panel is, it is more prone to moisture absorption and hence to compression and expansion. If the density of the substrate or the laminated panel is increased without changing any other characteristics, then in that case it will increase the internal bond, the stiffness of the material will also increase, and as well as as the susceptibility to moisture changes will increase. That is, it will become more resistant to moisture fluctuations. We have medium density boards called as MDFs and HDFs. So medium density boards having lesser density than their high density fiber boards. And then when in case of hardboards have the highest density, and the plywoods are having a little lower side of the density, but they have another advantage because of the grain layers are arranged all parallel to each other. It becomes more dimensionally stable. I will tell you about the structures of all these laminated panels, but right now I'm just giving a brief idea about it. Now the next characteristic is internal bond, that is how much force is required to pull the material apart. In case of MDF, HDF and hardboards, it's how strongly the fibers are all connected with each other. If you are painting on a laminated panels of thickness say 1/8 of an inch, then in that case you have to consider the internal bond strength, which is measured in pounds per square inch. That has to be more than 150 psi. The next characteristic is modulus of rupture, that is how much force is required to bend the material. More the value of this, of course, it will be difficult to bend the material. It is telling you the flexibility of the boards. In case of MDF and HDF boards, it will tell you about the dimensional stability of the material and also will determine the stiffness of larger panels. In case of plywood, it is also known as the modulus of elasticity. So the unit is called modulus of elasticity. You need to check that. Moisture content could also be a problem. There are two types of water which are stored into the laminated panels or in the wood. First is called the free water and another one is called bond water. So free water is not that much of a problem because it comes and just goes. But in case of the bond water, in situations where the moisture is less, of course there will be compression in the wood. Now if the compression exceeds a certain amount, what happens is that the lignin which is present in the wood, which is called the natural glue of the wood, will form a permanent bond and hence the change will be irreversible. So that could be a problem. In case of less moisture areas, it will contract and that contraction will be permanent. Linear expansion and moisture absorption will be another characteristic which will be determining how stable the wood is under moisture conditions. Like in case if it is absorbing water, how much dimensional changes will take place. Moisture contents of hardwoods ranges from 4 to 5% with maximum exceeding quantity in only 9%, and then you have to check the linear expansion, how much it expands. Under the moisture absorption, some of the hardwoods will be showing a linear expansion of less than 0.02%. In case of MDF and HDF, both the humidity absorption is 5 to 6%, but they will show a linear expansion of 0.3 to 0.4%. That is 0.3 to 0.4% of the actual size. Now let us talk about the laminated panels which are available in market. I will be talking only about the popular ones which are present, like the plywood, the MDF, HDF and the hardboards. So let us consider plywood. Plywood is put together to reduce the stresses caused by moisture and grain. Thin layers of wood veneers are peeled from the wood log by rotating the wood log against a very sharp knife. And then all these layers are put together one on top of another with the grain direction perpendicular to each other. The thickness of the plywood is dependent upon how many layers are used in making it. The minimum is 3 layers. In case of us artists, we have to use die boards, which are made up of 5 plyboard hardwoods. In the die boards, all the layers are of equal thickness and are made up of same type of wood. The most accessible and least expensive is the pine veneer. Now in case if you are using the plywoods made up of soft wood, they have the tendency to show through the paint layers. Hardwood veneers of birch, maple, walnut and mahogany are less prone to this problem. Now when you are going to paint a smaller painting, the thickness of 6 mm will be okay. In cases of larger paintings, the thickness should be taken as 1 inch. Like for example, if you are painting on a 16x30 board, then in that case the thickness should be 1 inch. And then the bracing will also be required along the longest side. We will talk about bracing in another video. Just mention that in the comments below if you want to know about it. In case of plywood, I have already told that the density is lower but the dimensional stability is more. So make sure that you're not taking very thin veneers, because what happens when you are priming or applying the gesso layers, they will have the tendency to swell up and they might crack also. Make sure that the veneers, that the layers are thicker. Now let us talk about MDF and HDF boards, which are called the medium density fiber boards and high density fiber boards. And what happens in case of medium density, these boards are constructed using a dry process. The fibers from the wood are broken down using a steam process and then are glued together under pressure and some binder. The binder which they are using is urea formaldehyde. Urea formaldehyde is having a problem of gassing out. Some of the manufacturers are using non-urea formaldehyde binders that you will have to check in the market. MDF and HDF boards have a density around 55 to 60 lb per square feet, and some of the manufacturers are able to reach the bond strength of 270 psi, which is very good. But the sizing and priming will possess a little problem. When you are applying the sizing, the wood will have a tendency to swell a little bit. Though the swelling in MDF is much more than compared to HDF, but still there is swelling. Now in case if you want to make it more stable, then sizing should be applied on all the sides and all the edges. The thickness should be considered a lot, because when you are making the panels for smaller paintings, the thickness could be 4 to 6 mm, but when you are going higher, then the thickness should be increased, but that will also increase the weight of the entire panel. As I have told you, priming these boards will be a little bit difficult, but what happens is that when you are applying the primer onto their surfaces, swelling will happen in case of MDF and HDF boards. So that means more layer of priming will be required. Again, these boards are little skeptical because they are still susceptible to moisture absorption and hence they are having mold growths. I will show you some of the pictures where some of my paintings have developed molds. I don't know what is the reason. That could be dependent on the kind of wood they were using, because I bought them from different manufacturers. Keep in mind that these MDF and HDF boards were made for construction and industrial purposes, and that is why they can't be relied on for using as a painting substrate. Let us talk about hard boards, which are the densest of all and more stable. We know that the MDF and HDF boards are made using dry process, whereas in hard boards we are using wet process for making these boards. The fibers are separated from the wood by using a steam process, and then these fibers are put into water, which will eliminate most of the lamina containing the lignins and tannins that can cause discoloration when the painting is painted onto the panels. They will be floated into water and the fibers are joined together by pressure and the natural glue which is present in trees called lignin. Hence they are less prone to moisture absorption. Now hardboards come in two types. One is S1S and one is S2S. S1S is having only one side as smooth, where S2S is having both the sides as smooth. We have tempered and untempered also. In the tempered one, a little bit of pH neutral oil is added. When the board leaves the press, at that time it will be applied onto it with a roller, whereas in untempered there is no such process of oiling out, and hence the tempered one becomes even more dimensionally stable and resistant to moisture fluctuations. The standard thickness of the hardboard is 6 mm and 4 mm. They come in varying sizes like 8 feet, 10 feet, 24 feet. Again, the smaller paintings can be painted on thinner panels, whereas larger painting needs thicker panel. If you're going to put the sizing and gesso only on one surface, again it will produce uneven stresses that can easily be solved by bracing, but it will be better if you put gesso and sizing and paint on all the sides of the panel. This was all about the panels. Now out of all these panels you can select your own which are available, and you have to keep in mind that sizing should be applied on all the sizes, and now the thickness should be considered depending upon the sizes of the painting you're going to paint on. So this was the information which I wanted to give you all from so long. The conclusion of this video is that the hardboards are the most dimensionally stable and stiffer panels and less resistant to moisture, but though you can use others also, experiment with them and decide on your own which one will be feasible and good for you. Sometimes some boards are not available in certain markets. market, so you need to check them. And smaller paintings can be done on any kind of panels, but again, if you want to avoid the mold growth and if you are living in a very humid area, avoid using MDF or HDF board. Now in case if you're living in a dry climate, then I think MDF boards and HDF boards can be a really good option. Now if you have any questions regarding the panels or any other things, just comment down below and I will try to answer you all. Okay, I know guys, this was a lot of information for you in a single video, but I think this is going to really help you. I have also written the blog about the same and I'll be linking that in the description below. If you want to check that out, all the information in written format, you can go to my blog and check it out. Do not forget to leave your comments in the comment section below to what kind of woods you were using for paintings and what are the changes you're going to make in the future after seeing this video. And also tell me about what videos you would like to see and I will make one. Share this video with your friends and family and everybody else, because I want them to know how much work goes into making a work of art, and show them the technical part of our art journey as well. Thank you so much for taking your time out to watch this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.